You ever notice how some people move through life quietly, almost apologizing for existing? They say sorry even when someone else bumps into them. They shrink a little when they talk, like they're trying to occupy less space than they deserve. And if you really listen to them, not just their words, but the silences between, you can hear it. That faint, invisible echo of a childhood that didn't feel like love. See, not being loved as a child doesn't always look like trauma. It doesn't always mean cruelty or neglect. Sometimes it's just silence. Sometimes it's a mother who was too busy, a father who was too tired, or a home that was emotionally cold, even if it was physically safe. You grow up in that kind of world, and the lesson sinks in quietly. I guess I'm not worth the warmth. What's striking is how long that message stays. Psychology calls it attachment theory. Basically, the blueprint your brain builds for every relationship that comes after. If love wasn't safe back then, your nervous system remembers. So when someone loves you now, part of you flinches. You wait for it to end. You test it, sabotage it, or quietly assume it's a mistake. It's not because you want to ruin it. It's because somewhere deep down, you still believe you don't deserve it. That's what childhood emotional deprivation does. It doesn't just hurt you once. It rewires how you expect the world to treat you. And here's the thing. Most people never realize that's what's happening. They just call themselves bad at relationships or too independent. But independence born from survival isn't freedom. It's armor. You learn early that needing people gets you hurt. So you stop needing. You become the self-sufficient one, the caretaker, the problem solver. You take pride in being low maintenance. But the truth? You're just protecting the child inside you, who once reached out and got nothing back. Some psychologists call it emotional neglect, but that word feels too clinical for something so human. What it really feels like is standing outside a warm house in winter, pressing your hand to the window, while everyone else seems to belong inside. You tell yourself you don't need it, that you're fine in the cold. But some nights, you feel it, that quiet ache, that longing you can't quite name. And if you grew up without love, you probably became really good at reading the room, hyper-aware of people's moods, facial expressions, tone changes. Because when you're little, love isn't just affection, it's survival. So you learn to sense danger, rejection, disappointment before it ever happens. Your nervous system turns into a radar for disconnection. It's a useful skill until it isn't, because even in adulthood, that same radar fires when there's nothing wrong. Someone texts you, okay, and your brain translates it as, they're upset. A friend takes too long to reply, and you feel abandoned. It's not drama, it's programming. Neuroscience shows that the brain of a neglected child actually develops differently. The regions connected to emotional regulation and self-worth light up in ways that reveal chronic stress patterns. In simple terms, your brain learns to expect rejection and builds defenses before it even arrives. You grow up mastering how to protect yourself from pain, but never how to receive love without suspicion. And here's the paradox. Those who are unloved often grow into the most loving adults because they know exactly what it feels like to go without. They overgive, overextend, and overcompensate, trying to create for others what they never had. It's beautiful in one sense, and heartbreaking in another, because so often they give until there's nothing left for themselves. Let me tell you something real. The hardest part of healing from an unloved childhood isn't forgiving your parents. It's forgiving yourself for the years you thought it was your fault, for chasing people who couldn't love you, for abandoning yourself just to feel wanted. But you weren't broken. You were adapting. Children don't stop loving their parents to survive. They stop loving themselves. Think about that. You were born with a natural instinct to seek warmth, comfort, and connection. And when you didn't receive it, your mind made a new rule. I must be the reason. That's how you stayed safe, by blaming yourself instead of facing the unbearable truth that maybe love wasn't guaranteed. And that rule doesn't just disappear when you grow up. It hides inside your achievements, your relationships, your work ethic. You start chasing approval like it's oxygen. You learn that love must be earned. So you perform for it. You succeed. You please. You impress. But deep down, the goal isn't success. It's belonging. You tell yourself you're just ambitious, but sometimes that drive is just a disguised ache. You're not trying to reach the top. You're trying to be enough. And it shows up everywhere. In how you overthink every text, how compliments make you uncomfortable, how you downplay your pain, saying, "I'm fine," when you're not. You wear a calm face even when you're falling apart inside. Because that's what kept you safe back then. Hiding the need for love you didn't believe you could have. But here's something most people don't realize. That emptiness you feel isn't proof you're unlovable. It's proof that you were wired for love, and something essential was missing. That ache isn't weakness. It's your body's way of reminding you what you deserve. The human brain literally depends on love to develop properly. Research from the Harvard Center on the Developing Child shows that emotional attunement, eye contact, soothing affection, consistent care, shapes the neural pathways that control everything from self-esteem to empathy. Without that foundation, the brain shifts into constant alert mode. It's always waiting for rejection, even when there's no real threat. So when you say things like, "I don't trust easily," or "I don't get attached," it's not your personality, it's your defense. You built walls because your early world taught you that love was unpredictable. But here's where it gets interesting. Healing doesn't mean tearing those walls down overnight. It means understanding why they're there and slowly teaching your nervous system that love can be safe again. It starts small. You practice receiving without guilt. You let someone's kindness in without assuming they want something back. You allow silence to exist without panicking that it means rejection. That's how the rewiring begins, one safe moment at a time. And it's okay if it feels uncomfortable at first. Of course it does. Because love, to someone who's never felt secure love, can feel dangerous. Intimacy can feel like exposure. But over time, those safe experiences begin to overwrite the old scripts. You start realizing that love isn't earned. It's remembered. It's not something you have to chase. It's something you return to inside yourself. Because here's the truth. The love you missed as a child isn't gone. It just never had the chance to be expressed. And when you finally begin to offer it inward, everything changes. You stop seeing yourself as broken and start seeing yourself as someone who survived by adapting. You stop chasing validation and start noticing peace. You stop asking, "Why didn't they love me?" and start asking, "Why did I believe that made me unworthy?" And that question, painful as it is, marks the beginning of real freedom. Because once you start asking it, something inside you softens. The war you've been fighting with yourself begins to quiet down. You start realizing that your whole personality wasn't really you. It was a map your younger self drew to survive a world that didn't know how to love you properly. The perfectionism, the overthinking, the constant scanning for rejection, all of it made sense back then. But now, it's safe to outgrow it. Perfect. Here's the final part 4 of your script, rewritten slightly for flow and freshness, while keeping every meaning, rhythm, and emotional tone the same. Healing from an unloved childhood doesn't happen through logic. It happens through small, gentle moments that convince your nervous system it's finally allowed to rest. Someone listens to you without interrupting. A friend remembers something you said weeks ago. You comfort yourself instead of criticizing yourself. and your body slowly begins to trust the world again. It's not fast or dramatic. Healing rarely is. But every time you experience love, that doesn't demand you to earn it. A part of you comes home. For some, that journey starts in therapy. For others, it begins in quiet nights, when they finally stop running from their own feelings. Sometimes it's as simple as looking at an old photo of yourself and whispering, "You didn't deserve that. You deserved more." That's not weakness. That's repair. It's giving yourself what you should have received from others: patience, safety, and understanding. It's realizing you can be both the wounded child and the adult capable of healing that child. And yes, it's hard, because the first thing you'll notice is how deep those habits run. You'll want to apologize for taking up space. You'll minimize your pain. You'll doubt your own memories. That's all part of the rewiring. Every time you choose kindness over self-criticism, you're rewriting the original story. Psychologically, that's how real change happens. When emotional attunement was missing early on, you must create it consciously later. It's called earned security, a concept proven in attachment research. It means even if you grew up disconnected, you can still form secure bonds as an adult through awareness, practice, and compassion. And when that begins, life starts to feel different, in ways that are subtle but profound. You stop chasing people who treat you like a backup plan. You stop mistaking chaos for connection. You stop confusing being needed with being loved. You start valuing peace over performance, stillness over validation. It's strange because, for most of your life, peace might have felt boring. When your childhood was wired for emotional unpredictability, calm can feel unfamiliar. Your brain may even try to stir up drama just to feel normal again. But when that happens, you can gently tell yourself, this stillness isn't emptiness, it's safety. That's how self-trust begins. You start realizing this late in life. After decades of chasing love through success, partners, or status, one quiet evening it hits them. They weren't chasing love. They were chasing proof they were lovable. And that realization is both painful and freeing. Painful for the years spent trying to earn what should have been freely given, but freeing because now you can finally stop running. You begin to see love not as something you get from others, but as something that flows through you once you stop blocking it. You start to understand that the people who couldn't love you were simply repeating their own unloved patterns. Not to excuse it, but to see it clearly. And when you truly see it, forgiveness becomes less about them and more about your freedom. You stop waiting for apologies that may never come. You stop replaying the what-ifs. You stop seeking closure from people who couldn't open emotionally. You give yourself closure by deciding your worth is no longer up for debate. And that's the quiet miracle of healing. You begin to become the person you always needed when you were young. You start building a life that feels safe enough to stay in. One study from the University of Minnesota followed children from infancy into adulthood to see how early attachment shaped their lives. The results were powerful. Those who experienced consistent emotional presence grew into adults with stronger relationships and greater emotional stability. But here's the hopeful part. Even those who didn't have it early on, but later found reliable, nurturing connections, showed the same benefits. The brain, it turns out, remains plastic, capable of change, no matter how deep the wounds go. So no, you're not doomed by your past. You're simply carrying an old map that needs updating. And maybe that's what growing up really means. Not just aging, but gently replacing survival maps with maps of safety. You start rewriting those old beliefs. I'm too much becomes, I'm allowed to exist fully. I have to earn love becomes, love is my birthright. If I show my true self, I'll be abandoned becomes, the right people will stay for who I really am. These rewrites aren't affirmations. They're acts of quiet rebellion against your past. Because healing from an unloved childhood isn't about pretending it didn't matter. It's about accepting that it did, and choosing to love anyway. Maybe that's the hidden strength of those who grew up without love. They understand the absence of warmth so deeply that when they finally find or create it, they treat it as sacred. They love harder, listen longer, hold space wider, because they know exactly what it's like to go without. So if that's you, if you see yourself in this story, please understand this. You are not broken for craving love so deeply. That craving is the most human part of you. It means your heart still remembers what it was made for. You were born to connect. You were wired for belonging. And the fact that you can still love, after everything, is proof that nothing ever truly took that away. The child inside you never stopped hoping that one day someone would see them fully and not turn away. And maybe, finally, that person can be you.